What do the Dallas Cowboys and Detroit Lions have in common? They were both a part of that 47-9 ass whooping on Sunday, October 13th. How about them Cowboys? How about them? They say all's fair in love and war, but what do you consider to be war? Well, if you're the Detroit Lions, then last year, when the Dallas Cowboys accepted a bullshit penalty from one of the most ref ball calls in the history of ref ball, ignoring the fact that a man literally came up to you, said that he was reporting as eligible, only for you to walk away, not count him as eligible, and then throw a flag on him for being ineligible, thus being a key part of why the Lions lost the game last year. Well, by accepting that penalty, the Dallas Cowboys declared war on the Detroit Lions. Now, obviously, any team is going to accept a penalty when it's called if it helps them out, even if they know the penalty is complete and utter bullshit. But as soon as the Cowboys accepted that penalty and walked off the field with their heads held high, that image was seared into the minds of an entire den of lions. A den of lions led by a man who has the face of a high fantasy troll, but the body of a high fantasy barbarian. This is a man who's so twitchy and so intense that it looks like he's one wrong move away from running over the nearest living thing and strangling it. And his team has clearly adopted his philosophy on life. Sure, they may make some of the most egregiously stupid-ass, imbecilic calls in the history of calls, but it's all in service of this insane mentality. They're not just gonna beat you. Oh, no. A beating means that you and your loved ones get off way too easy. They're not just gonna beat you. They're gonna fucking kill you. And I gotta say, as a fan of old school, insane-ass characters in football, I absolutely love it. And I also love how these motherfuckers held that grudge for an entire offseason. They circled this game on the calendar, and they came out and had the lineman reporting as eligible bowl. From the very first play, they reported a lineman as eligible, just to let the refs know, hey, you fuckheads, pay attention to this fucking shit this time. I don't know what the record is for having a lineman report as eligible, but I'm pretty sure they did it about a dozen times, including one play where they actually had two different linemen report as eligible. They went so far as to line their offensive tackle out wide as a wide receiver in the ultimate show of go fuck yourselfdom that I've ever seen in the NFL. Mind you, they were doing this shit as they were up 20-9, 40-9. It didn't fucking matter. Their point was not made until the final buzzer sounded, and even then, I wouldn't be surprised if they come out next time and do the same fucking shit. It's one of the most petty moves in the history of the NFLOL, and God bless the Detroit Lions for doing it. But God also damn the Detroit Lions for daring to think that they could be successful. You know, typically when you get tackled, you're the one who's most at risk for getting hurt. But if this game shows you one thing, fuck that. If the last 30 years shows you one thing, it's that the Dallas Cowboys can't fucking do anything right. And so even in the act of getting tackled, they couldn't even do that right. And they actually got Hutchinson hurt from the other team. Poor guy. All that momentum, his leg whipped around in the process of making the tackle, and it just happened to collide like a Muay Thai leg kick block. And the man sustained an injury that was clearly a result of spontaneous brittle bone syndrome developing in his tibia. Oh, if only there was a handsome YouTuber who in his preseason top 10 video talking about the Detroit Lions had mentioned, yeah, they should absolutely still be good, but come on, it's the goddamn Detroit Lions. Something's gonna happen. I believe I said Hutchinson would get drunk off his ass and get injured trying to tackle cars in traffic. Well, I was half right, because he did get injured making a tackle in traffic. Maybe actually 3/4 correct, because in order to play Dan Campbell's insane style, I'm sure he has those guys hopped up on all sorts of substances to drive them insane with rage. Well, rage-filled football has its downsides. And unfortunately, one of the best stories and most likable stories in the entire NFLOL, the hometown hero getting drafted by his team at the top of the draft and immediately elevating them to a place of relevancy that they've never been at in their franchise's history. Well, that story's gotta take a little bit of a detour.
Real quick ad break, everybody. I want to thank you all for watching. To truly express my gratitude, you should donate your life savings to my Patreon. Failing that, you should like, comment, subscribe, share this shit around, tell all your friends about this channel. And if you're sitting there asking yourself, well, what the fuck does you doing that have to do with me showing you appreciation? Shut the fuck up and stop asking questions.
As far as the Dallas Cowboys go, there are no words that I could speak into existence that would do more to assault their reputation than the performance that they put out there on the field. There's nothing I could say that would be more damning than the fact that absolutely everybody expected this outcome, because you had a bunch of soft, weak, pussy-ass football players put together by a completely incompetent, spoiled billionaire bully asshole, and his soft, weak bully mentality has filtered through his organization down to the last man. So when you put those guys up against a team that's fueled by testosterone and rage, a team that seems to exist solely to ground and pound you until you're begging for mercy, well, of course it was going to end up like this. Thank you, Dallas Cowboys, for fulfilling your role here in the 2024 NFLOL season. I salute your sacrifice of your dignity, manhood, and basically anything else that you might value as an aggressive, strong, tough NFL player. They say the world needs ditch diggers too. Well, in times of war, you could ask any enemy army, the world also needs bodies to fill that ditch with. And in the war versus the Detroit Lions, the Cowboys selflessly volunteered their corpses to be added to the pile in the trench dug by Dan Campbell's rage. You know, it's one thing to get your asses totally kicked by a team that specializes in brutality. But what if you're a team that gets your asses totally kicked regardless of who your opponent is? You're a team that's so poorly built, a team with a foundation so crumbled that every single week is just a new way to play. How badly can we fail to cover the spread? And no, we're not talking about Robert Saleh's first 2 years with the New York Jets. We're talking about the actual worst franchise in football right now, the Carolina Panthers. That's right, we're paying a visit to old Chodehead and Red Rifle Andy Dalton, playing alongside one of my favorite names in Chubba Hubbard. And I don't give a shit if it's Chuba. Your parents give you a name like that, and you're fucking getting called Chubba Hubbard no matter what. I mean, really, what kind of sick asshole parents give their kids a name like that in the fucking first place? Yeah, maybe it's a nickname, but either way, those parents aren't as sick as what the Atlanta Falcons did. I mean, going up against the Panthers and beating the living piss out of them like this, it's like going up to a crippled kid and kicking his crutches out from under him. If you want to have a get-right game for your running offense, go against the Panthers. If you want to have a get-right game for your passing game, go against the Panthers. If you want to have a get-right game for your defense, go against the Panthers. Unless, of course, you're a team like the Raiders, and then you find a new innovative way to embarrass yourself and save the Panthers from going 0-17. On the topic of a get-right team, the New York Giants for about 2-3 weeks looked like they were actually competent, but Brian Daboll is the NFL coaching version of a turtle. He'll pop his head out for a week or two and somehow make Daniel Jones look like a legitimate quarterback in the NFL. And then Daniel Jones remembers that he's a human giraffe, and he'll have a couple games in a row where blood struggles to make it up that giant-ass neck to his head. Without the ability to pump blood to his brain, all of his faculties slow down, and he suddenly becomes incapable of completing a pass or diagnosing a play, going through his reads, even against a defense as terrible as the Cincinnati Bengals. You know what's funny? Eli Manning always kind of had this aw shucks look to him. It was kind of funny to see with his mouth hanging open, looking like a cross between an ancient Neanderthal and a modern-day yokel. But appearances were always deceiving, as that guy sure as shit could throw the fucking football, sure as shit could diagnose a play, and goddamn could that boy win in the playoffs. On the rare instance he actually makes it. Daniel Jones was tapped to be the heir apparent to Eli Manning, and God, he sure does have the aw shucks look about him. But that's about all he has in common with Eli Manning. For starters, Eli Manning started running a 1-mile race back on the day he retired several years ago, and he just finished it last week. Both he and his brother were practically living, breathing statues back there in the pocket. But Daniel Jones is an athletic marvel. Wow, he's compared to the Manning brothers. Guy can absolutely book it, though he can't always make it. That's always one of my favorite highlights of all time, low-key. Poor guy looks like an awkward baby gazelle after just being born. You know, Daniel Jones eats a lot of shit in New York, but the guy can't really get angry. I mean, who's he going to be angry at? Brian Daboll? Brian Daboll coached him up so well in 2022 that Jones was able to earn an all-time contract that he had no business even sniffing. I mean, he's got 40 million reasons a year to eat absolute shit, but with the season quickly going off the rails and an injury guarantee looming in that contract, we're getting pretty damn close to the Daniel Jones era officially being over in New York. And not to be outdone, Joe goddamn Burrow said, fuck this, I still got working knees, I better take advantage of them because I probably only got about 3 weeks left. And he ran for 4 carries and 55 yards and a touchdown, almost tying what Daniel Jones did in 11 carries. Shit, Joe Burrow, I didn't know you had it in you. I mean that literally. I seriously didn't think his knees could actually take it if he tried to run that much. I thought his knees would fucking explode like Kyle in South Park after that transplant surgery, where they used testicles for kneecaps. But knowing the Cincinnati Bengals, he was quite literally running for his life. Well, this is that special time of year where the Cincinnati Bengals get to believe that they're actually contenders as they string together a couple wins in a row. Never mind the fact that it's going to be against the NFLOL's biggest punching bags. The Giants, meanwhile, are going up against the Eagles and the running back that they stupidly got rid of, even though he's the only reason their offense even looks semi-competent on a regular basis. But why would you keep a guy for $13 million who can help your next quarterback develop and have a great safety valve, when you can instead pay the wrong quarterback $40 million? That excuse that you gotta build a team really rings hollow when you're overpaying another guy $25 million instead of giving the engine of your offense a paltry $13 million. Out there in New York, they like to talk about the 2022 playoffs. I know the gold rush was in California, but I guess they really never heard of fool's gold on the East Coast. Well, Saquon Barkley's coming back to town, and I expect the New York Giants to completely shut him down and prove that what they did was not a... Okay, who the fuck am I kidding? Saquon Barkley's gonna obliterate that fucking team next week. I don't know if I've ever seen a stupider fucking use of a stat than NFL fans, especially New York Jet fans, pointing out that a win against Buffalo on Monday night will have the New York Jets in first place. This is the kind of stupid-ass, idiotic statement said with full confidence. The kind of confidence that can only be bred out of pure stupidity. How many fucking times does this team have to show people exactly who the fuck they are? So what happened in this game? What happened was that supposedly good defense, like it has always done under Robert Saleh when he was still there, absolutely choked and collapsed. You know, it's really easy to be a top-ranked defense when offenses take their foot off the pedal out of sheer pity because the New York Jet offense they're going against can't even manage to get a single fucking first down. And no, I don't mean they can't get a first down in one quarter. I don't mean they can't get a first down in one half of football. I don't even mean that they can't get a first down in a whole game. I mean, they go to the better part of a month struggling to get a single fucking first down. So whoop-de-fucking-do, the New York Jets defense didn't get blown out in the stat column because every team they went up against was playing ball control offense, not going for big yardage, not going for big points, because why the fuck would you? When you could take as few risks as possible, play it completely safe, keep your guys healthy, save your actual good plays for the opponents that actually deserve competent football being played against them, and easily walk away with a W. Now this year, you finally have a team with an offense that can move the ball up and down the field, thank God. I mean, they're not exactly putting in the end zone that much. And all the kicker amounts to right now is reason number Denver and reason number Buffalo for why Jet fans are questioning if continuing the consumption of oxygen is really a wise move at this point. Hey, does anybody remember when the Arizona Cardinals actually looked like they might have something with Josh Dobbs? Not anything great, mind you, but the fact that they were actually competitive and even pulling a couple wins out of a hat made you think that, hey, if they could just get right injury-wise, this coach might just know what he's doing. Well, what a shocker that Kyler Call of Duty Murray came back from injury and the Cardinals actually seem worse. And that's despite having an all-world talent in Marvin Harrison Jr. brought into the building. Well, I guess next year they can maybe pair a quarterback with Marvin Harrison Jr., get rid of Kyler Murray and his horrendous contract, and probably spend the next decade cursing the fact they've won one too many games and missed out on Jaden Daniels, who I can't even really say anything bad about at this point. I mean, kid goes up against an incredibly well-coached Ravens team and more than adequately acquits himself. Like, sure, they lost, but even in defeat, they continue to do more than enough to remind Dan Snyder that he's a fucking asshole. Speaking of being a fucking asshole, if a half of football could personify being a giant fucking asshole, then the first half played by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the New Orleans Saints would be that personification. The Buccaneers were up an easy 17-0 and then proceeded to give a punt return, an interception return, and I'm pretty sure the entire team rolled out an actual legitimate red carpet to the end zone and said, here you go, New Orleans, we'd like you guys to come back and be competitive in this game. The New Orleans Saints scored 27 goddamn points in the second quarter alone. And when I say alone, I do mean alone, because they scored 0 points in all 3 other fucking quarters. So that just tells you how egregiously incompetent Tampa Bay was. The only thing saving Tampa Bay from a Baker Mayfield meltdown is how horrendously injured and straight up bad the New Orleans Saints are. But as Tampa Bay goes up against more and more competent teams, the Baker magic seems to be wearing out. My guess is that he's going to cook up a hell of a lot more L's than he does W's as this season goes along. Am I rooting for the kid? You goddamn right I'm rooting for him, because every time he experiences success, the Cleveland Browns look like bigger and bigger assholes. A 20-16 loss is but a footnote in the story of the predatory dog pound. But if you want a real statistical footnote, check this out. Goddamn, Deshaun Watson is so fucking useless and so awful that he literally cannot engineer a single third down conversion. That is an epic level of failure. How the hell do you try to get a third down 32 fucking times in a row? You can't do it once. You should be able to slip and fall into a third down. The Cleveland Browns paid the highest price imaginable to what essentially amounts as a statistical anomaly of complete failure. And that took me like 8 fucking tries to say. In other news, the 49ers did exactly what they were supposed to do, beat the hell out of Seattle Seahawks. The Jaguars continue to be a punching bag for teams that are supposed to be good but aren't really that good, falling to the Bears 35-16 in the first game that maybe kind of proved, hey, Caleb Williams might actually have something here in this league. Somewhere in a dingy sewer, a handsome YouTuber shed one tear, but it wasn't a tear of happiness or pride. It was absolutely a tear of sadness, because God, I like ripping on the Bears for their all-time failure to develop quarterbacks, and I'll be sad to see it come to an end. Over in New England, the Patriots tried to pretend like they had some hope for the season and for their future by putting in Drake May against a Houston Texan team that was just chomping at the bit to eat that rookie alive. The Texans are in a weird spot all season though. I don't fully buy them as contenders, and every week they seem to oscillate between looking like a great, maybe even elite team versus looking like a team that's an absolute fraud. So yeah, sure, they came out against one of the worst teams in the NFL and beat their ass, but they got some tough matchups in the weeks ahead, including one against the Green Bay Packers next week, a team that gives up like a gajillion passing yards while passing for a bajillion passing yards. You'd expect to see one hell of a shootout with CJ Stroud and Jordan Love going up against each other. You might even be the type of degenerate asshole that puts a lot of money on players' passing yards. Man, it would really suck if one of those two quarterbacks came out and completely laid a fucking egg that defies all expectations and costs you a shit ton of money. And in case you're as stupid as a Broncos fan who actually thought their team was good this season, what I'm implying is that I just put a shit ton of money on CJ Stroud and Jordan Love to go for a bunch of passing yards and touchdowns. Because God knows if the Patreon isn't doing it and the view count ain't getting it done, then I gotta find some way to make rent in my sewer. Did you know there was a football game played in Las Vegas this week? Well, apparently nobody told the Raiders since they never bothered to fucking show up. I mean, shit, I know a winter's coming, but did they have to go into hibernation for half the fucking game? Well, the story of Justin Make-A-Wish Kid Fields getting carried to multiple wins by excellent coaching and an even better defense. Perhaps that story comes to an end here as the Steelers look to go up against a New York Jet team that's as desperate as they come. But let's face it, I don't think it matters what the fuck the Steelers do. If they keep Justin Fields, he'll run over the New York Jets. A team that thinks edge contain is when you keep getting really close to an orgasm and holding off at the last second. And if they put in Russell Wilson, well, the same team that beat Russell Wilson last season when he was on Denver while playing Zach Wilson is totally going to meme itself into oblivion by not only losing against that Denver team earlier this year with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, but they're also going to go against Russell Wilson and lose with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. Remember, folks, everyone and their mother in New York said that the Jets were totally going to be excellent this year once Aaron Rodgers was at quarterback. Everything was Zach Wilson's fault. Well, they can't possibly lose to Russell Wilson after they beat his ass last season, can they? We'll find out next week. And were the Raiders barely an afterthought in this recap? Of course they were, because they were barely an afterthought in that fucking game. Just like Antonio Pierce's dogs were barely an afterthought when he abandoned them and almost caused them to starve to death. And am I gonna bring that up every fucking time I bring up the Raiders? Bring up what? I forgot. Just like Antonio Pierce forgetting to feed his fucking dogs that week. Paid the highest price imaginable for what essentially amounts to a statistical anomaly, and that took me like 8 fucking tries to say.